Hello again, everybody, and welcome to the Mike Francesa podcast, part of the Bet Rivers Network. On this wild card weekend, as we welcome in the greatest undrafted player in the history of the National Football League, and one of my favorites, Kurt Warner, who you see all the time on the NFL Network and hear him on the games. Hall of Famer, two-time MVP, Super Bowl MVP, the legendary story. If you've never seen American Underdog, please watch it. You will love it. I could watch it twice on Sunday. And we welcome Kurt in now. And Kurt, welcome. Nice to talk to you. How's everything?
Everything is great. It's good to talk to you, Mike. I'm excited about the postseason and seeing how this thing plays out.
You know, it's funny. Here's what when I thought of you. I said, the other morning I'm starting to look at the wild card games in my office, and I said, look at the quarterbacks this year. No Mahomes, no Burrows, no Lamar. Yeah, you got Josh, who's number one. You got Stafford, who's going to win the MVP, number two. But try to rank these guys. And I'm sitting there and I can't rank them. I'm trying to rank. And I said, you know what? I'm going to get Kurt Warner, who I think, folks, is the best quarterback analyst there is in terms of technique, in terms of what it takes to play the position, in terms of all the intangibles. I remember Mike Holmgren telling me years ago, no position, Mike, do we screw up more on than quarterback. We don't teach it right. We don't scout it right. Even guys who are gurus get it wrong because you can't see inside these guys. You don't know what's going to make them special. Now, you've been there. You've traveled those roads. You can almost rank these guys from 3 to 14 in almost any order. You know, people have been down on this guy. They've been down on Trevor Lawrence. They've been down on Young. They've been down on Herbert. Go down the list. How about the range as you look at it, as someone who sees it better than anybody? How about the quarterback play from especially past Stafford through May and Hurts all the way down the line this weekend?
Well, I think the biggest thing is that, first of all, a lot of these guys are so young. And so I'm a guy that always likes to reserve ranking these guys or deciding who they're going to be until they've been in the league for a few years. And so, you know, we've got guys like May and Nix and, you know, those guys and Caleb Williams, you know, guys that have been in the league for a couple years that we've seen some really good things from them. But I'm not ready to rank them. I mean, you know, you could look at Jaden Daniels last year was unbelievable, or CJ Stroud, his rookie year, incredible. And then the second year, they take a step back. And so to me, I always feel like you need at least 3 years to get an idea of who a player is. And so I think we've seen great moments from really all of these guys. I don't think there's a guy in the playoffs from the quarterback standpoint that we haven't seen great moments from, maybe outside of Bryce Young, you know, the new guy to the block and you know, Carolina kind of sneaking in there at the end. Maybe the only guy that we don't really or haven't really seen some big time moments from. And so the rest of the guys, I kind of sit back and go, okay, I want to see who they are come playoff time. And you mentioned it, Matthew Stafford, you're going to expect him to play well. He's become a Ram. He's been really good. And he, you know, as you said, probably the MVP this year, has won a Super Bowl, all of those things. Josh, we expect him to be great come playoff time. Now, you know, we go from there. Brock Purdy maybe is next in line because it's a guy that we've seen and a guy that's shown on the big stage. He's been consistent really since he's become a starter, but he's shown that he can play in this stage and play really, really well. And then from there, you're kind of going, okay, you know, is it Jordan Love that would be next? Because, you know, he's played a couple games and he's played a couple really good games in the playoffs. You know, Bo Nix played last year, not really well, but, you know, the playoffs considering, but this year he's been really good. Drake May, obviously, you know, if he's not the MVP, he's the runner-up to the MVP. And then you mentioned Trevor Lawrence, by far playing the best football, the most consistent football that I've seen him play. And the way he's played down the stretch, you could make an argument that he's playing the best quarterback right now, even above all these guys, even above the 2 MVP candidates down the stretch. He has been fabulous, and especially with pushing the ball down the field. We all love Justin Herbert, and we know what he's capable of. Question becomes more pieces around him than it is him. And then, you know, then you've got the old guy in Aaron Rodgers, where it's like we saw some of that magic there down the stretch against Baltimore, but I'm not sure anybody's really giving that team chance. But that's the exciting part of it is that I think there's some knowns and there's a lot of unknowns. And there's unknowns in the teams. And the two guys that we talk about that are established, they got to go on the road. They're going to have to go on the road and do this if they're going to win and punch their ticket to the Super Bowl, which as well as I do. You're trying to win 3 games on the road. I don't care who you play. Is not an easy thing to do. And so I'm excited to watch this and see how it plays out and see, which of these quarterbacks will be in the Super Bowl and which will be standing on the podium when it's all said and done.
Kurt, would you have more faith in a guy who's had a great season like May? Or would you have more faith in a guy who has had postseason success like Purdy going into a playoff game?
Probably a guy that's had more success. And the reason I say that is because I think what can happen when we get to the playoffs is we know when you go through a regular season and there's always another game, it's easier to sometimes ride the waves within a game, because, you can have a good half or, a good series and then a bad series, and there's ebbs and flows in all of these games. When we get to the playoffs and this is it, like if we lose this game, it's over. You see a lot of guys that when something goes against them, they start to press a little bit and, they start to try to make up for that one mistake, and they're going to make up for it with this next throw by throwing a touchdown. And the whole thing spirals, completely out of control. And it goes from what's a decent game to a blowout game. You can think about, even like a Justin Herbert last year.
Yep.
The game was close early and it was kind of back and forth. And then all of a sudden, a mistake led to another mistake, to another mistake. And all of a sudden, this is a blowout game, for the Texans a year ago against the Chargers. And so that to me is why I like guys that have been there, that understand, I could go up in this game, but they're going to make a run at some point, right? I always look at my 3 Super Bowls as great examples. I was up 16-0 in one of them. It was 16-16 tied. I was down 17-3 in one of them. We came back and tied it at 17-17.
Yep.
And then was down 10 at the half against the Steelers, and we took the lead with 2.5 to go. And so all those ebbs and flows happen in even the biggest games. But I think it's very easy to panic when this is it. If we lose, we're done. And some guys start to shrink and go the wrong direction in those moments. And that's why I like the guys that have been there, have been through those experiences, have ridden those waves and understand what it takes at playoff time. And I think you have to be there a lot of times and go through some of that before you're quite ready for what that means.
Coaches who have been there, like Sean Payton, like Vrabel, etc. Okay, Vrabel is a player. Even Aaron Rodgers. The bottom line is, if a guy hasn't been in a playoff game yet, can the coach during the week prepare him for what's going to happen, or does he just have to? Is it just a baptism under fire?
Yeah. I would say it's a baptism under fire, but I would say I think the coaches can do some of what I'm talking about. In the moment and in the game, like they can be the one to help settle a quarterback down, or settle a player down when they've been in those moments. Like they're calm, or especially if you're a play caller like a Sean Payton and, Bo Nix, something happens and it starts to go a little haywire and you see him playing a little bit fast or playing a little outside of himself. I can start calling some plays that are like, okay, I'm going to settle him back down with what I do. I'm going to call some more run plays. I'm going to call some easy, quick completions, not ask him to do too much. So I think the calm of a coach that has been there and ridden that wave can help a player in those moments. But without a doubt, at the quarterback position, you feel that and you understand that. And we talk about it all the time. As a quarterback, it's got to be like one snap and clear. Whether it's good or bad, you got to move on to the next one and be the best version of yourself for the next play. But again, when all the marbles are there and that's in the back of your head that, man, I made a mistake, man, and that mistake could again, I could look back to the Super Bowl, my last Super Bowl against the Steelers. We got a chance to take the lead going into half. I'd throw a 100-yard interception, one of the biggest momentum shifts you could have in a Super Bowl. And it's like, I go into the locker room and everybody's looking at me like, dude, you just lost us a Super Bowl. Like, that was the perspective everybody was looking at in that moment. So for me, it was like, okay, there's not really anything I can say in that moment, but I know what I had to do when I got back out after half and go, okay, it's one play after another, and I got to go make some plays, and I got to get these guys to settle down and show them, hey, we're not out of this thing yet. And so I had been in those moments before, and so I knew how to handle it. But that was, that could have easily been a turning point for everybody, because the team follows the quarterback, and especially when it's a young team that hasn't been there. They want to know what you're going to do and how you're going to respond. And so that becomes so important in those moments. And I just, you just don't know about some of these guys. Like, not that they can't do it, not that they're not maybe, just as good or better in those big moments. We just don't know that yet. And as well as I do, we define great quarterbacks by how they play in these moments.
No question. No question. We're talking with the legendary Kurt Warner as we get ready for Wild Card Weekend, and a very different one because some of the big star quarterbacks not here for the first time in a long time. Two guys who have really had highs and lows, even this year. Sam Darnold, who has had a terrific season, but is also prone to the big mistake. Stroud, who has had real good games and some real puzzlingly terrible games. How about the range of those two, especially going into this postseason?
Yeah, I mean, you're looking at one, guy in terms of Sam Darnold that obviously has won a lot of games the last 2 years, has the number one seed and, everything in their favor going into this, but he still is the caveat for this team. Is that I know their defense has been great. And when they can keep it a low-scoring game, I don't worry about Sam when he can manage the game, because he's going to make some special throws, and he's going to do that. But when it becomes, or if it becomes, a drop-back type Sam Darnold, you've got to go throw the ball 35 to 40 times to win this game for us. I think everybody's sitting here going, can he do that? Is he that guy? And it doesn't mean he's a bad quarterback. He's a really good starting quarterback, or at least he's shown that the last 2 years. But there's something different about that guy that you say, okay, nothing else is working. Go win the game for us. And Sam hasn't really shown us he can do that. And when I say a drop back game, what I mean is, okay, you're not running the football. You can't benefit from action. You have got to drop back and win it by reading the game and throwing the football. Yep. And he hasn't. So that is a big unknown. And I think the same with CJ Stroud. With this defense that you have, I think it's going into this going, okay, how do we manage this guy? As opposed to when he was a rookie, like, I thought he was a top 5 quarterback in the NFL.
He looked like one. Yeah.
Entire rookie year. And he's not that guy right now. And so I think they go into this going, okay, how do we manage this? We know he's got big plays in him, but he's also got some mistakes and some of that in him too. And so we got this great. The biggest thing is we can't, throw it away. We can't give it away because they're going to keep us in every football game. So how do we manage this? And I think a great example was, we called the game for the Texans and Chargers a couple weeks ago, and they were able to come out and hit 2 big plays off the bat. And you're kind of like, okay, they're going to win this game because that's all the defense needs. And he struggled down the stretch. They really didn't do anything offensively, but they found a way to win that football game. And I kind of look at the Texans like that. It's like, if it's a low-scoring game that's back and forth, I'm not really sure because I don't know what I'm going to get from their offense. But because CJ's so good at throwing the ball down the field, if they can generate and just create a couple big plays and get their defense a couple touchdowns early, I think they're going to be a tough team to beat. But they are very much an unknown for me, going into this, just because I do not know what to expect from their offense.
Hurts gets a lot of grief considering how great he has been in big games. He has been great. I mean, you have been great in big games. He has been great in Super Bowls. Great. Okay. He hasn't played well. He's played just about as well as a you or a Joe Montana has played, or Tom Brady. Yep. But people are all over him, like he's an X factor. How do you look at Hurts this year and where he is right now?
I mean, I agree with you on Jalen Hurts, and it's really been everywhere he's been. He's won big games. He's played well in the big moments. But I also understand why everybody thinks what they think, because when you have great quarterbacks, what you see most of the time is consistent greatness.
Right. Great accuracy, prolific passing, and he doesn't do that.
Right. From a week-to-week basis, you know what you can expect from the great ones. Not that they don't have a bad game here or there, but like, okay, this is what he is. This is what he's going to give me. And that to me is the dichotomy with a guy like Jalen Hurts is that, man, there are some games where you leave the game scratching your head like, is this the same guy that played like he did in those two Super Bowls, that was the best player in both of those big games,
By
even
far.
against Patrick Mahomes. Yeah, like it just leaves you scratching your head because you don't really know what he is. You don't really know what you're going to get. And you don't normally say that with a great player. With a great player, you can chalk up exactly what you're going to get every time out. And if they don't give you that, that's the exception to the rule. And that just isn't the case with Jalen Hurts. And so he's such a tough one to gauge, because I do believe every time he goes out there, he could be great. But I also believe that every time he goes out there, that he might not do much of anything. And it could be a struggle for them offensively. And so that's really where it's hard for me, is that I don't really know. I want to say he is that guy that we've seen in the Super Bowls, but when you don't show me that, 75, 80% of the time, it's really hard to put your finger and say, well, that is who he is, because we've seen enough in the regular season, and specifically this year, where their offense just disappears. Like there is nothing going on for their offense, and as great as their defense has been, that concerns me. But it makes it for a great game, right? We got strength against strength. San Francisco offense against Philly defense. San Francisco's defense, which we can say the same thing about. Like, I don't know if they're any good either,
right,
against Philly's offense. So what does it come down to win this football game? But I still would say I go into the playoffs believing that, Jalen is somehow going to, flip a switch and be the Jalen Hurts we've seen in the playoffs, more than we've seen in the regular season, just because I see it, and that's kind of how it's etched in my mind, is the big games. But I think everybody in Philly has to be concerned with what we've seen from their offense this year.
NFL Network's Kurt Warner, the legendary Kurt Warner, with us on this wild card weekend. Kurt, they're having a meeting in Pittsburgh. They sit down and they say, Aaron, what can we ask you to do here? Do we have to keep the backs in and chip these guys on the edges, or can we put them in the pattern? Can we ask you to get rid of the ball? Can we ask you against these fierce outside pass rushers? And they have great pass rushers. Do we have to give you help? Can you do it without all the help? Where does Aaron Rodgers think he is mentally going into this game?
Well, the thing about their offense all year is they've been really good at getting the ball out of his hands quickly. I think Aaron is at this stage in his career where he doesn't want to stand in the pocket, and he doesn't want to hold the football, and he doesn't want to really let things play out. He might peek at something. Hey, if that's not open, I'm going to get you a completion. And I do think that's kind of the nature of how they have to play. DK's back, which helps a little bit. But even with a lot of their big plays this year, it has been,
Gainwell and Warren and guys like that. Yeah.
But it's been quick big plays. And what I mean by that is it's a go route down the sideline to DK where you're not holding the football. You're just back throwing it up and going. And so I believe that is going to be their approach in this game as well with these Texans defensive linemen. I will say my favorite game plan that they had all year long was the game plan that they ran against the Detroit Lions. And in that game, they did a lot of stuff where they put their two backs on the edge, almost like an empty formation, but put those guys on the edge. They used them to give presence to their tackles, to help with the pass rushers. At times, they free released them and got the ball out quick. And I really liked that approach. Now, the hard part is not having a lot of guys that can stretch the field. This Texans defense is great on the back end too.
Yeah, very good. Will shrink all three levels. Yeah.
And they will shrink the field and they will attack downhill. So it's a little bit harder to just dink and dunk on them all the way down the field because they're going to be aggressive. So you're going to have to take some shots. But I wouldn't be surprised if they did some of that same stuff they did against Detroit and said, hey, we're going to give help to the tackles, whether that's chipping or whether that's just a guy there that slows down the pass rush. And we're going to run a lot of these quick things. And that was the time that he put Gainwell out on the outside and they threw him the deep route and he made a great catch out there. And so I think that's kind of the nature of how they have to play this game is a lot of short, dink and dunk, come up with a plan to help on those edges. And then at some point, you got to take your shots to DK. You got to design some things and try to get a couple of those big shots down the field. But yeah, I just don't think this is a team that wants to drop back and hold the football. And so I think they're going to give a lot of help, but it's going to be more of the nature of let's get the ball out of our hands, positive plays, don't get behind the sticks, which has really been the nature of how they've played in the pass offense all year.
Well, I tell you, you still get those moments. Fryer off down the seam, Thielen with 3 guys on him, and those are the passes that only he could throw or you could throw, where those are those perfectly deadly, accurate, on-time plays that you say, that's a gift. That's a gift to have that kind of ability.
He does have that. And, and we saw some glimpses of, down the stretch in that game when he was kind of running the no huddle, and you could see that he was kind of designing things or signaling things on the outside. And there was a little bit there in terms of what he was designing and how he was taking advantage of the defense. So, not a lot of teams have had success against this Texans defense. I think they're looking at it probably the same as we are, where I don't know what we're going to get from the Texans offense. So if we can just keep this thing close, maybe it's, one drive, one more special drive like we saw last week from Aaron Rodgers, and we can steal a win at home in the cold, from this really good defense.
2 things when talking with Kurt Warner, of course. A quarterback I'm going to be hard on here, who I think is 16th and has to prove a lot, and that's Young. He has got to prove a lot. Is this too much for Young?
Well, I mean, I think it might be too much for their team. I don't think this is a team that is built to make a long playoff run. And, we can look at the quarterback and, it's been fun to watch Bryce Young because we all know what happened his rookie year.
Yep.
And he looked out of sorts and it looked overwhelming to him, and as if
looked dreadful.
Yeah, maybe he couldn't make it. And then to see what's happened since that benching and the way he's come back, I mean, he makes a lot of plays for this team. Like, he does a lot of really good things. I did a breakdown this week just about there's some technique issues that I think he has that causes him to be a little bit slower.
Not exactly a classic passer.
Exactly. And he's not the big strong-armed guy. Right. So when you don't have great technique and you don't have, a strong arm or the physical tangibles, that can put you way behind the 8 ball. And so that's the thing I see with him is there's a lot of up and down. Even though he makes plays, there's a lot of things that he misses. So I just think this is a great step for him and for this team, but I just don't think their team is ready to, and again, I mean, the season, to be a 8-9 team and go into the playoffs. I mean, that's kind of who they are. They've made strides. They're a better team. They're lucky to win their division and get into the playoffs. But I just don't, it's a growing up moment for them, but I just don't see this team being able to advance. And it's more team structure than it's even Bryce Young.
All right. The other guy can be as good as anybody in the sport, or he can be really shaky. And that's Love. Love can be as good a player as there is in the league at his position, or he can be head scratching. How about him right now? Coming off a concussion and everything else.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the hard part. The one thing that I do love about Love is he's a big playmaker. And, let's talk about this game specifically. Going into this game with Chicago, the 2 games that they've played against Chicago has struggled to consistently move the football and put points on the board. And what Jordan Love does is he makes big plays.
Yep.
And you make 2 or 3 big plays in a game like this against a team that's not great offensively. And I mean, quite frankly, they're not a great football team, the Chicago Bears. They have exceeded expectations and done a lot of really good things.
They had great fourth quarters.
But they're not a great football team.
No.
And so that's the one thing I like about Love going in is that I believe he gives them the ability to make those big plays and those game-changing plays that will put a lot of pressure on Chicago. Now, nobody knows what we're going to get. He's been out a couple weeks, coming off the concussion and all of that. But that's really been his MO, is that, he's a little bit more of a gunslinger. He looks to take the big shots down the field. And that was really the difference, in the win that Green Bay had against Chicago. And then obviously, when he was playing early in that game, when they took the lead, that was kind of the nature of how they play. And so that's what I like about him. But yeah, I mean, I think there's still some unknowns with Jordan Love because he has been a little bit more up and down, but I always count on him to at least take some shots down the field. If they're able to hit him, that's when I think this team becomes really dangerous.
And then the great player who everyone's watching, it's his time. Is Allen ready to do what? Hey, it's a lot to ask for any player, but we know how great a player that he is. He is a all-time great player. We know that. Yep. He can lift a team. They're not a great team. They're not a great defense. They can run the ball. Cook's probably really the most underrated back in the league. They can run it on anybody, but they're vulnerable. And then they have the great Josh Allen. How about Allen as he's on the doorstep of this right now?
Yeah, this is such an interesting one because, he's obviously been in a lot of pressure situations. But I'm not sure there's a situation where he's had more pressure than this one.
Yep.
Because even though they're a wild card team and have to go on the road, everybody is looking at it like you did earlier. Okay, no Joe Burrow.
Yep.
No, no Lamar Jackson. No Patrick Mahomes. Yep. This is your time. You haven't been able to get over the top with those guys in there, but now they're not in there. A bunch of young guys. Now's your time. Yet it's probably just as tough a road, having to go on the road the whole time that he's had. And so is he up for the task? I mean, we all know he's capable of winning and carrying this team a lot of different ways. Now, I've made the argument, and I've made it for a while, but I've made it all year, is that I believe the best Josh Allen is not the one that puts on his cape 15 or 20 times a game. It's the one that plays in the pocket, plays on schedule, allows the offense and everything to work for him, and then he has to put on his cape a couple times, put on your cape a couple times, and win a game for us.
You don't want him to rush 15 times.
Yeah. Well, and what I really don't want is I don't want him to get to the back of the pocket and start to move and take off.
Right.
Like, okay, I got to go create.
Right.
Let the game play out and allow it to be easier for you, because that to me is when he's at his best. But there are times when it feels like he feels like he's got to take on that persona of, okay, I've got to make the big play every time. And when that happens, I think this team takes a dip more than it goes and ascends up. And so that's what I'm going to watch for, especially early in this game against Jacksonville, is what Josh Allen are we going to get? Are we going to get the one that settles in, plays the game, isn't trying to, use the big arm or run around and make all these plays, but just, hey, if it's a 5-yard throw, it's 7-yard, take it. And then when the big plays are there, you take the big plays. But then when you have to create, just don't try to do it too much, right? We've seen, I think about the Houston game. I think about the Philly game. Yep. I mean, in both those games, he took like a 25-yard sack. Right. And it's things like that where it's like, okay, the play's over. Let it go. Throw it away. Don't run around and fumble after, running back 25 yards and those are the kind of things that to me, and I get it. It's a fine line because it's some of the stuff that makes Josh great. But I also think there's times when it hurts the team when he's trying to do that too much. So he's good enough to carry them. He's good enough to take them to the Super Bowl, I believe. But it's got to be the best version of Josh Allen if he's going to go on the road for 3 and get it done.
Would you take, I'll give you one or the other, and I'm asking everyone the same question. Would you take the 2 number ones who are clearly vulnerable? They're young, they're vulnerable, okay? They haven't been here. Or would you take the Rams and the Bills? They have to both go to road. They got the big quarterbacks. Obviously, the Rams have a tremendous coach. They have the best, in my mind, wide receiver in the sport. He is, Nakua is just unbelievable. I mean, how good he is. Stafford's had a great season. Would you take the Bills and the Rams? I think I would take the Bills and the Rams over the 2 number ones myself. Which way would you go?
Yeah. I would say because of the road for the Rams, like, again, if I got to take both of them, I'll give you that in a second. But I will take the Rams in the NFC field just because I like the road that they have to go. Carolina, and then they'll go to Seattle, who we know is the number 1 seed, but we've watched them play Seattle twice, and really they should have won both of those games. But they didn't. So I like the matchup that they know Seattle the way that they do, and so I believe they've got a great opportunity. Buffalo, I don't think is as good of a team. And so as much as I understand what you're saying is, take those guys, I do think going on the road in hostile environments over and over again is a really tough thing to do. And, the road has to be the right road for you to do that. And I just don't know, because I look at, like you said, the Bills. If he shut down the run game, man, do they have enough in the pass game? Like, do they have enough on the defense to win games that way? I just don't know. And so I would lean towards Rams over Bills. If I had to take both of those teams against the field, I'm probably going to take the field to at least have one different team that would represent their side in the Super Bowl.
If it's 13-13 in the fourth quarter of an AFC game and Josh Allen's playing, we're all going to expect him to win.
Well, and if he doesn't, we're going to be all over Josh in this situation, especially when you're not playing one of those other great quarterbacks. Unfair situation for him. I think we all understand it. But yeah, I still think it's going to be tough. I think this first one, going down to Jacksonville, I think is going to be tough right off the bat for the Buffalo Bills.
They're a good team. They're a good team.
May even be the toughest
and he coaches them fast. He coaches them fast and loose too. He coaches them to be aggressive. He really does.
He does.
Yeah, and I agree. They're not going to play timid. They might lose to Jacksonville, but they'll play. They won't play timid in this game. I agree.
Yep.
That's not an easy game. I totally agree. One other one that jumped out at me: if the Rams had to go Eagles versus going Seattle in the second round, would that be harder or easier in your mind?
You're saying the Rams going to
go
Philly?
let's say they had to go play. So Packers win, and they have to go play the Eagles in the second round versus Seattle, and the Packers go play Seattle.
Okay.
Would that be a harder road in your mind or an easier road?
I would say that would be an easier road, even just because the things we talked about with Philly's offense. They went out to Philly earlier and they should have won that game other than the block kick late.
Yep.
And Philly was probably playing better overall at that point than they are now. And so with the offense of the Rams, with where the offense of the Eagles is right now, I still think Seattle on the NFC side, maybe besides the Rams or a little bit over the Rams, are the most balanced team, right? They're the team that can beat you the most ways with a great defense. They can run the football fairly well. They can throw it with Sam when they need to. I still think that may be the most complete team. And so that, to me, if you've got a good matchup there when you're the Rams, I think going to Philly with where they're at right now would probably be a little bit easier of a matchup than going to Seattle.
Kurt, enjoyed it very much. Enjoyed the weekend. Thanks very much. Always a pleasure to talk to you.
Awesome. Look forward to talking to you down the road and enjoy the playoffs.
Be well. The great Kurt Warner, as we get ready for Wild Card Weekend. And again, you think about guys who were not drafted into the NFL. Antonio Gates, John Randall. But here's a quarterback not drafted into the NFL who becomes a Hall of Famer, a Super Bowl MVP, a two-time regular season MVP, an amazing, remarkable career. A couple of things. Number one, let me tell you about the Mike Francesa newsletter. Sign up for the free Mike Francesa newsletter. You get exclusive content, contests, and offers. Go to the podcast, MikeFrancesa'Podcast.com, and sign up. Remember, it's absolutely free. Now, players who place a qualifying same-game parlay of at least $10 on eligible NFL and NCAA football games will receive one standard entry into the weekly Squares games. Winning standard Squares will be awarded a prize of up to $50 bonus bets. See app and website for more details. I know you want to get to all the coaching situations and the Giants with Harbaugh, which I've been talking about for 2 months. Okay. Now, we will do that tomorrow when we do our regular football weekend stuff and all the picks. We got the 2 college games. We got, obviously, Wild Card Weekend. Great games coming up. Great weekend for football fans. A game Thursday night, a game Friday night, 2 games Saturday, 3 games Sunday, 1 game Monday. And I'm looking forward to the Monday game with Houston and Pitt, because a lot of people are counting the Steelers out. I'm not counting them out at home with that defense and with Rodgers. I'm not counting them out. I'm really not. I think it'll be a very close game. So we got a lot to do. We'll be on a lot the next couple of days. So we'll see you tomorrow.